stand in our way, and our golden age has just begun.
This is Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
Now it's time for everyone to understand what America First truly means. Welcome to the Second American Revolution.
All right, folks, we're back. Human Events Daily here, Real America's Voice. We're still waiting for word from the Pentagon regarding the Secretary of War, regarding his aircraft that did turn back, I should say, to the UK over the Atlantic, some kind of in-flight state of emergency, in-flight issue that was pulled. So we're going to be getting that to you as soon as we can. We're waiting for word from them directly. But as we wait for that, and I'll break in as soon as we get any knowledge, we do have, are very honored to have on the program, joining us via phone, Congresswoman Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, how are you?
Hey, Jack. So happy to be back on.
Well, and it was great to see you yesterday as well at the Rose Garden.
Yeah, that was by far one of the most beautiful ceremonies I've been to. And I just know that Charlie would be over the moon that he was honored in that way, especially on his birthday. But I just want to give really a lot of credit to Erica Kirk, because her speech, obviously incredibly hard to do given circumstances, but it was so beautiful and so well written. So she's definitely going to continue his legacy in an amazing way.
Well, I think that's right. Of course, you and I both know that Charlie was kind of like the last person who wanted to celebrate birthdays. He was definitely one of those guys who just, if you didn't remember, because I remember when he turned 30 and we were just giving him so much crap for it. And he had tried so hard not to mention it ever. It's like, oh, Charlie's finally, over the hill, which was, funny because,
so
both
funny.
myself, Tyler,
so
and Andrew are like all kind of around the same age, but we're obviously much older than, Charlie.
Yeah, no, 100%. I actually had looked at one of our mutual friends' stories from yesterday, and there was a photo of me and Kyle Kashuv and Charlie singing him happy birthday at one of the first Turning Point events back in 2018. And it's just so funny because Charlie really never changed, but you can see the size of the event, and this is when Turning Point was really just kind of getting started, and kind of seeing the contrast and what he was able to accomplish. It was so neat to kind of even just hear President Trump go through, knowing Charlie not just as, a conservative pundit or a politico, but as a person. And it just, I think it's important to note that with everything floating around on the internet that, unfortunately, what happened with Charlie was a result of, this militant, trans radical nature where they literally want to kill if you don't agree with what they're doing. And essentially, Charlie was advocating for what we've been founded on, which is that debate, that speech that makes us a free and fair country. And they wanted to silence him, but it only made his message bigger.
And by the way, Congresswoman, if I could just hold you for a second there. So we do have the statement from Secretary of War's department. This is from Sean Parnell, the Assistant to the Secretary of War for Public Affairs. On the way back to the United States from NATO's defense ministers meeting, Secretary of War Hegseth's plane made an unscheduled landing in the United Kingdom. So they are on the ground. They made an unscheduled landing in the United Kingdom due to a crack in the aircraft windshield. The plane landed based on standard procedures, and everyone on board, including Secretary Hegseth, is perfectly safe. Well, thank God, because in light of everything we were going through yesterday and everything that happened, I think 35 days ago, about a month ago now, you get situations like this, you get reports like this, and you have to all take them, unfortunately, very seriously. And Congresswoman, that's exactly what you were just saying a moment ago, that to be a conservative in America, to be a conservative in public life in this country, you yourself, by the way, not only as a conservative, outspoken, but also a mother, a wife, someone who was very close with Charlie. This is very serious business, and all of us have targets on our back now.
Oh, 100%. I actually just reached out to the Attorney General because we had a death threat come in where they're literally calling for my public hanging and for it to be live streamed. And we are waiting on a search warrant from the Attorney General's office. And this is coming from people that do not like, what we're standing for. I also saw recently that because of the fact that we've obtained, this is, historical documentation pertaining to the JFK assassination, and the findings of the Soviet government at the time of the assassination that, many people within the JFK community and historians have been trying to obtain from the Russian government for decades. We obtained this information, and someone recently was, making allegations that I was a patsy. Well, you know what a patsy is. A patsy is used as someone that essentially commits a murder and then ultimately is neutralized. And so it's been interesting to kind of see the rhetoric of how the radical left at that, has been painting anyone who disagrees with them, and then they use a certain type of speech to justify violence against them. And I've seen it a lot with you, Jack, and I know that you've been really since the get-go, even before MAGA was cool. You kind of have been there since day one. I remember that viral video photo of you confronting Antifa. And that type of behavior and rhetoric is well funded from foreign adversaries, and it's not going away anytime soon. And so I'm happy to see that the FBI and the DOJ is fully going after this. And I think from what I'm hearing out of the DOJ, you're going to be seeing an announcement here in the next few days regarding an individual by the name of Neville Singham.
Well, there's so much of this, and Congresswoman, obviously, I can't wait to hear more about these files that you received as well. But just on that topic as well, when we're talking about, and I had the opportunity to participate in this roundtable with the president last week regarding these networks. Last week, talking about how this is very serious, how the FBI is now taking it seriously. A federal investigation has been launched, but at the same time, when we went after ISIS, Congresswoman, there was a whole of government response, and so I'm interested to question you is when you speak with law enforcement, do they seem to take it as seriously? Because when it's the left, because the vice president was just on the Charlie Kirk show, and he said publicly that it seems that when he goes and talks to federal law enforcement, in many cases they don't take it very seriously when they see the threat of left-wing violence out there.
Oh, yeah, no, I've been told, and I'm not the only one. You can talk to any number of members of Congress, Kat Kimmick, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, Randy Fine, other members that are pretty vocal, that when they report things, especially to the Capitol Police, which is supposed to be the investigative arm and body, or even sometimes the FBI, that it's considered, not a threat. Well, last time I checked, if you're literally, calling for someone to be publicly hanged, that's a pretty big deal. And so I think that you're seeing, though, a culture shift within these agencies, because many people that did not like President Trump or, Republican ideologies have essentially left these agencies. And there's been also an influx of people joining. But all that to say, if you're considering a career in law enforcement, please consider joining, because we need you. And ultimately, it is about upholding the rule of law. And for a lot of what's been happening over the past decade, there seems to be more activists that were recruited so that they did not have to enforce the law. And we need the opposite.
Well, that's right. And they seem to think that anything the right does is violence, even if it's just speech, and anything the left does is just speech, even if it's violence. Now, Secretary Bessent has come out publicly and talked about some moves that Treasury is making. And I really do think that it's the foreign funding and direct funding, the financing of Antifa and these networks, and not just Antifa, but all violent left-wing networks, is really going to come to the fore. This is how we went after ISIS. We used whole of government. Treasury has absolutely incredible and fantastic powers to be able to track this money. Congressman, you've been tracking a number of foreign funding sources for these violent networks. Tell us what you're hearing and what you're seeing.
Oh, yeah. So I actually came across a brilliant woman. She's a data analyst, and she actually goes by Data Republican on X. So to be clear, the information that was brought to me that I was able to verify was actually from her findings. She was able to track.
And she's incredible, by the way, and was actually
Jenica,
very close with
yeah.
Charlie, and she and I chat. I've actually got to meet her at the inauguration. She's wonderful.
She's brilliant. Her name's Jenica, and she actually had presented me, because I was like, where the heck are these riots? It was like BLM riots, except they inserted, instead of the George Floyd signs, the Mexican flag, which is kind of ironic because I'm half Mexican. I'm like, these flags are brand new. Typically, if you are Mexican, you don't just have like a crispy brand new flag unfolded with, with everything ready to go, just hanging out in your closet. And so, you could see that this was obviously a funded riot. And so she was able to provide funding receipts and tied down a lot of these ICE riots going back to the Party of Socialism and Liberation, which is funded by an individual by the name of Neville Singham. Well, Neville Singham is an American billionaire who made his money working directly with the CCP, and actually has one of his offices in China, actually across from, I think it's like their Ministry of Propaganda, or what would be their equivalent to the Ministry of Propaganda. So we actually found the funding tied directly right then and there. And actually last Congress, he was written up by then Senator Marco Rubio when Senator Rubio was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. And I believe it was Senator Chuck Grassley for a FARA violation. So, the Registered Foreign Agents Registration Act actually requires you, if you're advocating or lobbying on behalf of a foreign government, to actually disclose it. Well, he's breaking the law with that. But it's not just that. I mean, a lot of these organizations are targeting not just ICE officials and law enforcement, but they've resulted in violent rhetoric and action, not just against politicos and conservative thought leaders, but also against law enforcement officials. And so it didn't just stop there. We also found that Neville Singham and his funding was also tied to the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City, which is now under federal investigation for prior knowledge of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. As you know, they were the ones that actually took down all of their social media right after the Tyler Robinson individual was arrested. And that is another, game, or that's another rat nest in itself. They actually have ties to terrorist groups in Cuba. So there's a massive orchestrated attempt here at fracturing not just the right, but also the entire country as a whole, pitting us against each other, which is a Marxist tactic. And if you look at really what they're doing,
Congresswoman, we're coming up on a very, very quick break, but I know you have to leave in a minute, but I'd love to hold you just to finish this point. And by the way, you are correct. It actually is called the Chinese Ministry of Propaganda, Shenzhenbu, in right there on Chang'an Avenue in Beijing. I've walked past it many times on my way to Tiananmen Square. I'll be right back. Jack Posobiec, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, smashing the left-wing networks and their financing. Right back. Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice.